All right, now it is time for the top five segment, man. And we teased it at the top of the show, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun if y'all haven't seen these yet, because it will give you a little bit glimpse into what you could still go see in the theaters right now, or what's about to be available on a streaming service. So this week's top five is top five favorite films of 2024 so far, and there's been some good ones this week or this year so far. I mean, I will say that,
and this week,
and this week, I mean, we've talked about it before, and we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. Like, there is a drop in the overall box office so far this year, about 11%. So we'll see how that goes, and hopefully that does get rebounded with like a Deadpool and Wolverine, and hopefully Kingdom of Planet of the Apes can do big things too. I don't know if it'll break 100 million, but I think it'll be close. I mean, I think the CGI films do way better overseas than they do here.
Yeah,
if they're not superhero movies.
No, yeah, and I got to be honest with you. One of mine that's on my list, and I'll talk more about it when we get to it. But it was The Fall Guy, and I'm shocked that did not do better than it did in its opening weekend. It was number one, but I mean, it was low 30s. And I mean, you're talking fucking Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling coming off the two biggest movies of last year and huge star power. You would have thought this was a no-brainer, and yet it wasn't. So, yeah, man, I don't know. The box office is just a tricky beast, bro. It's a tricky beast.
I know. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I've heard some interesting points about that, but we'll talk a little bit more about it when we get to yours. Number 5 for me goes to Dune Part 2. Now, everybody knows, at least if you're originally like listening to the show or regularly listening to the show, and if you're new to the show, I don't like Timothée Chalamet. I just don't think he's the best actor. He can only really play one role. That doesn't mean I don't like some of the movies he's in. Like Dune, I wasn't the biggest fan of the first one, but this second one, I really enjoyed. Of course, it's still a slow burn type of story, but I mean, also the same can be said about Star Wars, which I'm a big fan of, but I could really see a lot of the resemblances between Dune and Star Wars in this specific movie.
Interesting.
But, I mean, the third act of Dune 2, great. So freaking good. I think, like, some of the best action sequences I've seen all year so far. So I definitely think it was worth it. I talked to a lot of people that really enjoyed it as well. Have you gotten a chance to see this one yet?
I have not. And I need to, because I was like you. I was not overly impressed with the first one. I remember the 80s ones, and so I always held it in comparison. And I didn't hate the first one. I just, like you, it was not just a slow burn, but it was like sometimes it felt like it just came to a complete grinding stop and had to restart, a few times. It just wasn't. So I was skeptical about 2, but I have heard good things about 2, so I think I'm going to try to gut through the first 2 acts and get to the third act, because everybody that I have spoken to, like you just said, says that the ending is worth sitting through it. So I guess I'm going to check it out. My number 5, I just saw. I literally just saw it. It's The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and if you were listening to the show up earlier, I'm a fan of this new series of them that started with Franco's, with Caesar and stuff. This is kind of the continuation of that, and the whole time I'm watching this, it's very much still the continued story of the Caesar stuff and what's started with that trilogy, right? But it's also a huge shout out and homage to the 70s original Planet of the Apes movies. And I think we love Mark Wahlberg, but can we all just agree that everybody just kind of pretends that one didn't happen? Like you think Wahlberg and Tim Burton's going to be huge, but no, that thing really just was not good. We like to pretend that was never part of it. But this one, they take all the great detail in, as they say, aping, that they started with Franco, right? Andy Serkis playing Caesar and the coaching on how to be apes and how to interact. And you can tell that they're all in on this. And that was necessary, because in this one, like in the original films with Charlton Heston, when they crash on a planet, which we find out is actually Earth. They didn't crash on any other planet. It was actually Earth. But in like those originals, in this Kingdom of Planet of the Apes, the humans are like beasts. They can't talk. They're the animals, and the apes are the rulers of the planet. They're the educated. They're the informed. And so it's a very much throwback to the original films. And that's why I think I was really enjoying this one. It was kind of it's got a little twist. They, maybe or maybe not, one of the apes finds out that they're not all stupid. Maybe there is a human here or there that remembers how to talk. Uh-oh, what does that mean? But we have 8 more movies to find out what that means, apparently, if you heard at the top of the show. But all in, though, the action sequences are really good. The dialogue is well-driven. The pacing is really good. Because there is a lot of storytelling to kind of set up this next wave, which makes sense in the first of a trilogy, right? You got to do it. But overall, I was really pleased, and I think it's going to do well this weekend. I don't know how well, but I do think it'll be number 1. And I'm excited to see where the franchise continues to go. I know I've been knocking franchises, but I'm excited to see where this one goes. It was really good. I enjoyed it. My number 5, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. Go see it this weekend.
There you go. There you go. Yes, my number 4 goes to Past Lives. This one was an Oscar-nominated film, and I really enjoyed it. This is the definition of storytelling at its finest. And it's about 2 deeply connected childhood friends who rested or were completely torn apart when one child moved to the United States and the other child stayed in China or South Korea. And basically, they reconnect 20 years later. And they are reunited for one fateful week as they confront their notions of love and destiny. So basically, they were childhood sweethearts and thought they were going to be together forever until one family moved to the United States and one family stayed in South Korea. And you always go through situations where you think about relationships and you're like, what if that would have happened? What if this would have happened? And, this is a great what if movie. And, yeah, and it shows you the evolution of people's lives, too, because, so many people can change over so many years and over one situation. One situation or one experience can change a person for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And this is not a social experiment type of movie. So it's definitely worth the watch. Past Lives.
And this is the one with Greta Lee, right? Like, yeah, and I'm a huge fan of her. I think she's just phenomenal. And what I really like about this movie, the premise of this movie is, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Doesn't matter if it's decades later, if you're separated by continents or what. If it is meant to be, it will be meant to be, and it'll happen because that's how the universe plays out. So I love that premise of that movie. My number 4 is The Fall Guy, and I'd love to tell you all about it, but I'm not the kind to kiss and tell. Anybody my age will get that joke. It's the theme song from the television show, sung by Mr. Lee Majors. Okay, listen. I was skeptical about this. You guys know I was worried because I was a huge fan of the television show, and I was like, do we need another reboot of another 80s TV show? Should we touch this? I'm glad they touched it. It was really, really well done. I love the chemistry between Gosling and Blunt. I thought they were fantastic. The storyline is not exactly what you think it is. He's not a bounty hunter, but he is hired to go find the lead actor who's been mixed up with the wrong people and gets kidnapped, and he's got to go find him to finish the film. And the reason he's so in and willing to do that is because his former first AC and the love of his life is now, after they split, they've been apart for years, she's now a director, and this is her first big film, and he wants to make sure it's a huge success for her, so he agrees to go get the leading guy. But the whole premise, there's lots of twists and turns. There's lots of, wait a minute, didn't see that coming kind of a thing. It's all intentional, but it's so brilliantly done. All kinds of action from start to finish, obviously. It's about stunt people. So it's all about the stunts. And stay for the end credits because they do a fantastic job during the end credits of showing you all of the stunts being done in the film with the real stunt people. And so it's a love story to the stunt people. And the cameo from Lee Majors, Colt Seavers himself, and Heather Thomas, Jodie from the series. They're both in it, and you have to the payoffs at the end when you see them. Colt still looks pretty good. Lee Majors still pretty good, even though he's like almost 180. Or I don't know, he's real old, but he still looked pretty good. Heather Thomas. I had to double take to see if it was her. I was like, is that Jodie? Is that Heather Thomas? Oh, shit. Anyway, it's really good. And I'm disappointed that it's not doing better than it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It gives you everything that you would think a summer blockbuster would have. It's got romance, it's got drama, it's got action, there's fun scenes, there's a karaoke scene where Blunt is just fucking killing Phil Collins. It's epic. There's a Taylor Swift moment where Gosling's crying his eyes out to All Too Well. Who the fuck wouldn't love that? It's everything, and yet it's not hitting the way the studio thought it was going to hit, and that's disappointing. But I loved it. My number 4, The Fall Guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was listening to a couple of different theories about this one, and the first one was the marketing was great, but it was kind of hard to gear or try to get a glimpse of what it was going to be. Was it like an action movie? Was it a comedy? Was it romance? And I guess they were saying that could be a little confusing. And then another point that I've never even really thought about was, is Ryan Gosling an actor for men? Because I mean, that's a great point. A lot of his hits are like very female driven movies. They're very romance, he's not the typical idea of an action star. So the guys, I mean, that's a good point because I mean, just coming off of Barbie, that's obvious. Crazy Stupid Love, obviously.
La La Land,
La La Land,
yeah.
So I mean, I feel like that's a good point. Like,
okay,
he's not the guy's guy.
I get that. I totally get that. But if you watch this film, it would change your mind. And I wish people would go see it because it's action throughout and he is whooping ass. He is like with Aaron Taylor Johnson and all the people that he's like these huge guys, these action stars that he's like going head to head with and he's beating their asses. And he's like Winston Duke. There's a great fight scene with him and Winston Duke taking on a bunch of bad guys. And they're like fucking just like awesome, man. So if you want to be convinced that he's an action star, that he's a guy that can pull it off, watch this movie because he's ripped and he's fucking kicking ass. And yeah, dude, I think more. I'm going to go on record and say this. I think this film will see massive numbers when it hits streamers. I think people will see it on streamers and go, shit, I should have seen this thing. Yeah, I really do predict that. I think it's going to be one that finds an audience on the streamers and does really well.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of completely set up my third one because that's kind of the way this happened. It was very good in the theaters, but it was also doing really good numbers on Netflix too. And I'm talking about Anyone But You, Glenn Powell and Sydney Sweeney. I mean, I love this film. It's so good. It's one of my favorite rom-coms of all time. And just what they're able to do translating from theater to streaming, I think has been amazing. And Sydney Sweeney keeping in that mode of still promoting it and still talking about it. I mean, it was just a couple weeks ago where we talked about how she was the one who came up with the whole "are they together, are they not together" ploy behind the scenes. That's so freaking smart. Everybody talks about, and we compared her to Marilyn Monroe. Everybody talked about her being a bottle blonde and, you know, this heartthrob, doesn't have any brains, when she was actually the valedictorian of her graduating class. And all of these different things. Like, so she's super smart. But Anyone But You is a great film just to sit back, relax, and just laugh at. You know, it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it always, like, it gives you that hope that you can find love even when you're not looking for it. But it's really good. Have you checked out this one yet?
I have. I did not see this one in the theaters. I did catch it on Netflix, and I loved every second of it. I thought it was just a really great rom-com. It was fun. It wasn't your stereotypical rom-com, which is maybe why I liked it so much. I thought it was well done from start to finish. I loved their chemistry, and so her idea to market that, playing it up as that they were having an affair, was fucking brilliant because the chemistry was there between the two of them. And it was a brilliant idea to do that. And this plays really well into my number 3, which did not get theatrically released, but everybody that I'm seeing that has seen this movie agrees that it should have because they think it would do massive numbers at the theaters. It's another rom-com. It's called The Idea of You. And this is the one with Anne Hathaway, and it's where she's basically a divorced mom. The guy left her. He's got a new young wife, and she's just trying to get, she's turning 40 and she's trying to figure life out or whatever. And the dad buys these like Coachella tickets, VIP access to his daughter's favorite band, but it's not her favorite band anymore. She's moved on. And so, but he's still all excited to bring her, and, you know, and her friends still like the band, so they're all excited about going or whatever. But long story short, the dad can't go, and ends up, mom has to take them. And mom meets the boy band, and mom is hanging out in the VIP thing and has to go to the restroom, and she goes the wrong way, and she ends up in this dude's trailer, the lead singer of the boy band's trailer. And she thinks it's just a restroom. So she knocks on the door, and he's in there, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And then he comes out, and he's like, waiting on the restroom? Yeah. And so she goes in, and then when she comes out, he's sitting there, and she realizes, fuck, this is not the restroom. This is this guy's trailer. What the fuck? But anyway, she kind of finds out he's the lead singer of the band. And she's starting to feel it in the crowd. And he sings to her, and he dedicates a song to her, and they start a romance. He's like 22 and she's 40, and he's the leader of a boy band, and they start this whirlwind romance, but they actually end up really falling in love with each other, But the pressure of that, the paparazzi outside the house, the shit the daughter is taking at school from friends, all the kind of the ex-husband, like, what the fuck are you doing? Why is this kind of a thing? It causes pressure, and she walks away from the relationship, and nobody's happy, and all kind of bad kind of things. But it has a happy ending. I'm not going to spoil what the ending is, but it has a happy ending. But it's one of those things, like what you just said. It's a very well done. I wouldn't say rom-com. It's more of a romantic dramedy, but it's very good about how sometimes life just happens and unexpected things happen, and you can fall in love and you don't really know who you're going to fall in love with, and what is age? Is it a right or wrong thing? How is it supposed to play out, kind of a thing? It's just a really well done story, and the chemistry with Anne Hathaway, and I wish I knew the guy's name that plays the lead. Remember the Netflix flick about the royalty, that red royal and blue, about the gay couple or whatever? It's him. He's the lead in it.
Nicholas Galstein.
Yes. The chemistry's outstanding. And what was really interesting is there's really the age gap. And so I just really loved this movie. So if you haven't checked it out yet, it's on Prime. And just check it out. It's a great movie. The idea
shout out to Brent
of you.
Bailey, he's in it.
Yes, no, oh my god, and his scene is hilarious. His scene with Anne Hathaway is fucking hysterical. So yeah, definitely check this one out. The Idea of You.
Yes, for sure. Well, our number 2 and 1 are both the same, and I mean rightfully so, because both of these are really good freaking films. Number 2, Bob Marley, One Love.
Yep,
I feel like this is the way a biopic should be. Let the music flow you, let the music ride, but don't let it turn into a musical. I feel like that's very important, and it's a fine line, and I feel like they did really well at Paramount to do that. Our biggest critiques are the accents. The accents can be a little hard to listen to sometimes, but I mean, you got to make it as real as possible. But yeah, I think, it was a great film, and I loved everything about it. Like, honestly, I gave it a 5 out of 5 in my review list for this year so far. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
No, yeah, and it's interesting that how you said that, like, don't make it a musical, because it is a biopic about the music of Bob Marley. It literally what he was trying to say with his music. And the performances are outstanding, but it never does cross the line of becoming a musical, even though the story is literally about his music. And to be able to craft that so well and not be able to get it wrong, yeah, it was brilliant. And he went all in. Listen, man, he was legit. There were points where even Bob Marley's own son couldn't understand what he was saying, and he said it reminded him so much of his dad because he couldn't understand his dad half the time. So that shows you the dedication of how in he was of playing this role. It was just, I loved it. And you can't help but walk out of it grooving. You're feeling the love, man. You're feeling the Bob Marley groove. You just want to go get high, put on some reggae, and live some life.
True.
Which I may or may not have done afterwards. I'm just saying, Bob Marley he was on to something. He was on to something.
Kingsley Ben-Adir.
Yes.
Kingsley Ben-Adir, who's played some very notable people. If you guys don't know. I mean, he was Malcolm X.
Yes.
In One
Night in Miami.
Bob
Yeah.
Marley. He was also one of the Kens in Barbie. He was Barack Obama in The Comey Rule.
Yep.
So he's played some freaking people, man.
He
That's
is
for freaking sure.
A phenomenal actor. I'm glad he's finally starting to get the recognition, because he is. If you can pull off fucking Barack Obama and Bob Marley and fucking Malcolm X, you're a motherfucking actor, okay? Because those are three drastically different individuals, and yet he was believable in every one of those roles. So this guy is killing it, man. He is killing it.
Completely agree.
Speaking of killing it,
number one films, speaking of, is Civil War, man. A24. This is a masterpiece, in my opinion. Like it's visually very, I don't want to say appealing, but I mean gravitating, I guess you could say.
You can't take your eyes off of it, but
you can't. It's hardcore. Like I didn't have any critiques about this film at all, because it's a very storytelling film, and like I guess probably us coming from broadcast journalism and being in the field and experiencing some crazy stuff like drew us in even more, because I mean that stuff happens. You are in the middle of it, and like, you know, people just ignore you and go by. Like when they're in actual like war fight scenes and like people just run by the press, that's really how it is.
No, yeah.
I mean, like, we've seen dead bodies on crime scenes. We've been to crime scenes where there's active shooters.
Yeah.
All of these different things. So this film really took me back. I know you too, back to those situations. But it is also a mirror into society and what possibly could be. That's for sure.
I think you said that perfectly right now. I think this film was so well done that at points you forget that you're watching a movie and you feel like you are a correspondent traveling with this group in the middle of a war. You just feel like you're a part of what's happening, that you're now in it and watching this, which is intense. It's sometimes hard to watch. But it's so well done, and it gives you so much more respect for journalists and what they do. And what they're put through, and like you said, the things that you see, if you think you're able to desanitize, you think you're able to just wash it out of your mind and move past it. But this movie does an excellent example of showing you, even if you think that you have, you probably haven't. Like you said, I don't know. I know you and I have talked about it a little bit, but I have literally seen a man's flesh still melting off when he was burning inside a car. I have seen a dismembered body. I have seen a suicide brain splattered on the back of the wall. I have seen a victim of a train wreck. I've seen shooting victims. You think you move past that. You do not. And sadly, they stay. The good news, the happy news, when you report on an inaugural event or you report on a big party or they're fun, but they don't seem to stay with you. It's the other stuff that stays with you. And so even more so, this movie, it's a stark look at reality of what journalism really is, and then where this country is headed. And it's terrifying. And if you've come from the South, you can't watch this movie and not go, yeah, that's accurate. I know that guy. I've seen him at my gas station. I mean, it's and nobody wants to admit that, but you've seen that guy, and you know that that's possible, and that's why this movie is so terrifyingly good, and why probably it's both our number ones. So, if you haven't seen it, I will say this: it is not kid friendly. Do not take your young kids. I would say if you have teenagers and you're educating and informing and wanting them to be aware of what's happening in the world, take them, have that conversation, start the dialogue. But yeah, go see this film. It will certainly open your eyes.
Start a conversation. That's
and Kirsten Dunst, if she's not nominated for an Oscar, I will be literally shocked. I will be literally shocked.
They need to re-release this around
at the end of the year, because she definitely deserves it. She by far. Whew.
Agreed. Well, anyway, guys, that is our top 5 segment. Let us know what your favorite film of the year is so far. Please be sure to comment below in the YouTube comment section, Spotify, podcast, Apple Podcast, and X Threads, all the good places. We love the fan interaction.
Yes.